our last lesson for Genesis today, and last lesson, obviously, in my Sunday school book as well. So we'll be starting Exodus. Actually, we're going to kind of transition into Exodus a little bit today, but specifically, we're going to finish out the rest of the book of Genesis this morning. So we are kind of coming down to the conclusion of the life of Joseph. Obviously, we're going to come to the conclusion of the life of Jacob as he's going to die, as we will see here today. The lesson's going to show. In fact, today's lesson deals with Israel blessing his sons. So the 12 tribes of Israel. And he actually blesses two other children. Anybody know who those other children are? Joseph's two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And you remember how Joseph is treated like the firstborn, or the firstborn privileged rights, you know, the coat of many colors? Well, he gets that, basically, in the end. Even though there are blessings that go to all the sons, Joseph is going to get a double portion, and it's not in him, it's going to be in his sons, as we will we'll just reference, I imagine, more than we actually will see. But what promise have we been tracking all the way through the book of Genesis? Well, for the most of the book of Genesis. The coming of the Messiah, right? After the fall of man, God made that promise, and we've seen that line continued all the way through the sons of Seth, that are the ones that come out of Adam, all the way to Noah. And then out of the sons of Noah, which line do we follow? That you have the Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Which one do we follow? Not Japheth. That's Gentiles. Shem. The people. Just always remember, if you ever hear somebody say anti-Semitic, which they're talking about Jews, it comes out of that name, Shem. Okay, anti-Shemitic. That's the name of the Shem. So we're talking about the Shemites is the line, and then we specifically get one out of the line of Terah. Terah is the father of three boys. One specifically we note starts with an A, and he's the most important person in the Old Testament. Abraham, okay, or Abram. And then out of Abram's line, we have two sons that we can trace through. Which one is the son of promise? Which one's not? Huh? Ishmael's not the son of promise. Isaac is the son of promise. And then from Isaac, we have two sons. Which one is the son that the promise continues through there? Jacob. Okay, and then from Jacob, we got 12 sons. Actually, you could say 14 if you want to really pin it down, because you got Ephraim and Manasseh playing that, but we can say 12. Out of the 12, which one is going to be that promised line through? Not Joseph, though Joseph seems to be the obvious choice. Who is it, though? It's Judah. Judah becomes the one and we'll focus on that this morning. All right, so Genesis 49. Genesis 49. And I want someone to read, just real quick, I only have a couple verses I want to read, so I want to get somebody who will read a small portion at first, verse 1 and 2, and then we're going to pick up at verse 8 through 12. So if you'll read us 1 and 2, and let's stop for a second after that.
Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you at the last day. Gather yourselves together, and hear ye, sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father.
Okay, so Jacob is about to die, and he's going to pass this blessing on to his sons. And the blessing, do you get the idea here that it is prophetic? Do you see that? I'm going to tell you what's going to happen in the last days. I'm going to tell you what's going to play out in the future. Okay? And as we continue to read, we're not going to read everything. We're only going to read one of them specifically, which is the one we were just talking about, Judah. We're going to see how the Lord plans and continues that line. Okay, excuse me. Verse 8 through 12. Go ahead and pick it up, Bill.
Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemy. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, as an old lion, who shall rouse him up. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and to him shall the gathering of the people be.
To verse 12.
Binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass colt unto the choice vine. He washes garments in wine, his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes shall be red with wine, his teeth white with milk.
Okay, there's a lot of things said there, and we're going to try to unpack what he's talking about. If you go through and you can see, he starts off with the firstborn in verse 3, Reuben. Then he deals with Simeon and Levi. Then we get to Judah. He deals with Zebulun. He deals with Issachar. Deals with Dan, Gad, Naphtali. Even does Joseph in a way where he blesses Joseph singly, Benjamin, and so forth. We see him going down through all the 12 sons. But the one that stands out the most is the one, Judah. Now, as Bill gave us a bit of indication there in the guess of where does the lineage continue through, he said Joseph. That would sound like the most obvious choice, wouldn't it? Because he's been the son of favor in Jacob's eyes, and he's also been the one that's blessed all of them, hasn't he? And so he would seem like the obvious choice, but that's not the choice that God makes. God chooses the person Judah. Now, here's another choice that people would sometimes assume should be made. Well, maybe it should be the firstborn. Reuben's the firstborn, but he doesn't get a nice blessing at all. In fact, he ends up sort of being given a downplay in what's going to happen. Look at verse 4. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up upon thy father's bed, then thou defilest it and went upon my couch. So he's basically, because of what you did, your tribe's not going to be blessed. The people that come out of you will not excel. They'll never rise to anything great. Wow. Does that not tell you something about your sin can have lasting effects? I think I can get away with it. Not necessarily. Now, so we got some of that stuff playing out here that we need to remember. Judah. Now, here's the other thing about Judah. When Judah went, he was the guy who suggested to have Joseph put to death. Now, isn't that an interesting thought? Now the Lord chooses Judah to be the one through the promise. These blessings and lack of blessings seem to be sometimes related to who they are, like the one Simeon and Levi. He mentions about them being instruments of cruelty, and he's actually referring to the people of Shechem. We didn't talk about them, but they're the ones that I mentioned that they went in after Dinah gets defiled by those people. They went in and just basically slaughtered all the men after they. Promise by getting them all circumcised, and they're all now in pain. While they're on their beds in pain, they came in and slaughtered them all, and not able to defend themselves. And these are those, and they end up having some things that are said against them. So it's really interesting why one goes one way and why one goes the other way. It really it tells us that God rewards according to your works, and then sometimes God just chooses to bless you despite you. Do you get that? Is that not how God works? He doesn't promise that everybody's going to have the same road they go down. He has the plan and purpose for everybody. He's not an equal opportunity God. Okay? I'm just going to tell you that. God's not fair. I'm just being honest. I'm being clear. He doesn't work the same with everybody. If he did, everybody would in fact, if he did, everybody would be in hell. That's what should happen, right? But he doesn't do that, does he? And nobody would have the opportunity to be forgiven if that was the way God worked. So God, the Bible even says that at one point that he blesses those whom he chooses to bless and he curses those whom he chooses to curse. He hardens whom he hardens and he softens the hearts of those whom he chooses to soften. I don't know how to explain that except for the fact that God is sovereign and he chooses what he wants to choose. Okay? So we do see that being played out here. Now, that's not in my notes. I just wanted to make the point that you see that playing out here. Okay? Let's look at Judah specifically. Is this a promise to Judah himself? Not necessarily. It's a promise to Judah's family line, okay? His tribe, what will come out of the people of Judah. And Judah, look at the first thing it says about him here in verse number 8. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Now, that's an interesting little thought. Anybody know what the name Judah means? Just guess. Praise. So it's a play on his name even. You are going to be the one that's going to be praised. You're going to be praised. Your name means praise, and there's this poetic understanding that your brethren will praise you. Well, how are they going to praise you? We'll see that in just a minute. Look at what he says about them, about Judah's relationship to his enemies. Someone read the line there that it uses. The hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. That's kind of a idiom that sort of says Judah's going to have military power over his enemies. Okay? That's the idea of that phrase. Okay? What relationship will Judah have to his brothers? Look down in your Bible. They're going to bow down before him. Now, is there anybody else we know in the line of Jacob that had his brothers bow down before him? Yeah. So this almost sounds like a Joseph promise, doesn't it? Okay? Your brothers are going to bow down before you. Okay? And this also gives us an indication that Judah will be a ruling tribe. The people that come out of Judah or out of the line of Judah, there's going to reign kingdoms, or there's going to be a kingdom that comes out of that. Now, we know that to be true, don't we? All we got to do is read the rest of your Old Testament. You're going to find out Judah becomes a major, important character and tribe, in the nation, in the history of Israel. Okay? Next little thing here. Verse number 9 tells us about Judah. There's something interesting in that. What's it call him? Lion's whelp. That's a young lion. Then he says, what else? From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched, or he, got down like a lion's ready to, come down and pounce upon something. As a lion, as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? What does that mean? Who shall rouse him up? Rouse kind of carries the idea who's going to overcome him, who's going to take him down. It's a question that's a rhetorical question of saying who's going to overcome him as the lion. What's the obvious answer? No one. So how's he described here? As a strong lion that cannot be overtaken. He cannot have his kingdom put down. Does that not sound like something we know about the nation of Judah or the line of Judah? That there's going to be a king that will never cease to be a king that will come out of the line of Judah. Okay? And he's a lion. All right, verse 10. What's a scepter? It's not a sword, but it's a staff or something. You ever see the kings holding those little weird poles that are about this long? That's a scepter. Pharaoh had scepters too. Have you ever seen that thing with that curved thing? That's kind of a scepter as well. It's just sort of a sign of royalty, a sign of ruling. And so when it talks about him having the scepter in his hand, what's it saying here? He's going to be a king that rules. That's the promise here. Then look again, just kind of like who shall rouse him up in verse number 9. Look what it says again. Scepter shall not depart from Judah. And then he says, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come. Now, does anybody got an idea what you think Shiloh means, or Shiloh is a reference to? Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a lot of people believe it's a reference to the king, the final king that will come, the king of peace. Shiloh is a word that's close to shalom, which is the king of peace. So some people actually believe it's a reference to that. There's a city or a town that's called Shiloh when you get in the book of Joshua. You'll see it where they set up the tabernacle, and I'm not sure why it got the name. It just says that's where Shiloh is. But Shiloh appears to be a reference not to a city, but to a king himself. And who would we say that probably is? Yeah, Christ. So, regardless of how that phrase is interpreted, what does verse 10 tell us about Judah altogether? Hold on, we'll get to that in just a minute. He's going to be a king, and out of the tribe of Judah there will be a king that will be forever. Okay? Now, his reign. Let's look at the reign that comes out of the line of Judah. Look at verse number 11 and 12. We've got an interesting imagery given here. Binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. Now stop right there for a moment. If you got a choice vine, we're talking about like a grapevine. Do you want to put an animal that could come up there and yank that out of the ground to your choice vine? You're going to bind that to your choice vine? No. So why does he say that then? Binding the foal to the choice vine. Okay, so let's say it this way. Let me give a question this way. Somebody's got a bunch of tools, lots of tools. I'm just going to talk from my perspective because I mess with tools a lot. Got a bunch of different tools and in categories of tools all together. So like it got a bunch of miter saws, not just one, a bunch of them. And somebody just happens to go up there and they get up there and they destroy one of the miter saws. If your attitude is like this, well, hey, I got a bunch of them, it don't really matter. I got a whole pile of them over here. And they're all brand new, haven't even pulled out of the box. That's fine. You broke that one, fine. Now, in my case, I would be irritated because I only got one, right? So you get the point here when he's saying here, the choice vine. He says you don't mind tying your animal up to the choice vine because you don't just have one. You have lots of them. And you can afford the animal eating off of that thing. You can afford the animal maybe pulling it out of the ground. You can afford that because you're loaded. It's everywhere. The idea is that the idea of what it's saying is out of the line of Judah, when this king reigns, there's going to be abundance all over the place. And he goes on to continue to say that. So much abundance. Look what else, how he describes it. He says, you're going to wash your garments in wine and your clothes with the blood of grapes. Now someone says, well, that'll make everybody's clothes purple. The imagery is saying we don't need to use water. We have wine everywhere. It's just a way of saying we are wealthy. We don't have to use what common people use. We got an abundance overflowing. Does that make sense? Okay, purple's royalty. I'm not sure that's the meaning behind it, but there, you can throw that one in there. The point is that we're doing so well, we don't have to worry about any of that. Okay? You wouldn't wash your food or wash your clothes in your food in things that were considered valuable unless you had a lot of it. Do you get that point? That's the image. That's the idea of what he's saying here. Then look what else he says. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. overflowing again, and healthy. The idea of being red with wine and white with milk is just, it's sort of saying it's not only going to be an abundant kingdom that he's going to rule over, but it's going to be a healthy kingdom that he rules over, okay, that comes out of the line of Judah. So you get the whole imagery? We're talking about a king that cannot be taken down. He is a lion that cannot be destroyed. We got a kingdom that's going to be accompanied with great provision and great health, and all the brethren of Judah will be there and bow down to it. Okay, you got that? That's the promise of this prophecy. Let me ask you a question. Has this fully come to pass? Has it fully come to pass? I ask the question again because it hasn't fully come to pass. Or has there ever been a time when Jesus has ruled and reigned in this kind of level? No, not yet. He's ruling and reigning, but it's not at the level that it is there. Does that make sense? That it appears to be described as. Okay? We still live in a fallen world that's broken, and the world resists Christ, and people don't all bow down to Christ, and there's not this continual humbled heart to Christ, but there's coming a day when that will be. Do you understand that? And when that is, the whole world will be judged, destroyed, and all that are part of the kingdom of God will live in this kind of prosperity and blessing because they're under the king that can never be destroyed. Does that make sense? That prophecy has yet to be fully realized. It has partially been, hasn't it? We've seen God fulfill that promise because that's who Jesus is. He is the king that comes out of the line of Judah. All right, now let's look at a couple, 3 verses in Revelation chapter 5. Go over to Revelation chapter 5. I need someone who will read verses 5 through 8. Who's going to read those? Okay. Wayne. Interesting there. The imagery sounds very similar to what Jacob is saying there. He calls him the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Why does he reference him as a lion? Because it comes out of that prophecy. This is the one that this is the lion that Jacob was talking about that would come out of Judah. This is that lion. And it says, and he's going to receive basically the authority to rule over all the nations. And when he is seated, what happens? The 24 elders bow down at his feet, which I think is sort of a reference to his brethren, or we'd say to those that are saved. The saved do. So there's that idea here. You get that? So the final fulfillment of that prophecy is Jesus Christ in his fullness as a king. Okay? All right. And you can keep reading on in the book of Revelation till you get to the end, and you see the blessings. You see the world put in judgment and the blessings brought upon those that are part of his kingdom. You see that? Okay? All right. Got another one. 1 Samuel 17, verse 12. When you find it, let me see your hand, whoever wants to read it. Okay, Fred. David was the son of that Ephrathite. Yep. Okay, so here we see another reference to somebody that comes out of this line who also fits in partly in fulfilling this prophecy, David, and he's from the line of Bethlehem, Judah. Who do we know David to be? The king of Israel. And he's actually, when you read the rest of the Old Testament chronologies, you find out that all the other kings are held as sort of in regard to him as being he sort of becomes like the standard bearer of what good kings should look like. David is. Okay? And they keep referencing him. Why do they keep referencing him as he did not like unto his father David, or did like unto his father David? Why do they keep doing that all the way through, if you're familiar with that? Why is David the one that keeps being the reference point? Well, he's not the first. There was another king before him. What about some kind of promise? I can't hear mumbling. What was it? Yes. God promised that his line would never end. Right? Yeah. And that's that Davidic covenant. Okay? And that plays into this prophecy we're reading as well, doesn't it? Okay? Now, I do have a question that does come up. This isn't in our notes here. What about when Nebuchadnezzar came and overtook Judah and captured the kings? And there was never a king after that point. Never. There still has never been one out of the line of Judah. Did the prophecy come to an end? It went underground. Someone give me an answer. Anybody got a specific answer? Yeah, it's the line still continues on. Whether we're talking about there being an everlasting king physical, I guess it doesn't last that way, but there does follow the line. One of the very first things you see in the very beginning of the Gospels is that genealogy that it goes from Abraham to David, and then it takes that from David all the way through the time of the Babylonian captivity to Joseph and Mary and then Jesus. And it gives you that genealogy for the purpose of showing he fits in the line. He is the king of that lineage, okay? And I think that was one of the biggest struggles, I imagine, for all the people of Israel when God took down the nation of Judah. Did this promise get blown apart? And it didn't get blown apart. Even then, God was still preserving the line. Even when they were in captivity, he was preserving that lineage until Shiloh would come, until the one we were looking for would finally come. Okay? And even the interesting thing to note is that whenever we look at them coming back into their land to rebuild the temple, rebuild the city walls, who's sent back as a leader? He's not a king, but he's sent back as a leader. If I remember his name, starts with a Z. Zerubbabel. He's out of the line of Judah. And out of the line of Judah, he acts as a governor over the people of Israel. I just think that's interesting that plays that way and that lineage continues on, and that even the new king, the Persian king, gives him that authority to rule in that lineage in some sense, but not as a full king. So, does that make sense? Okay. All right. Well, what we're going to do today, this is going to be a fun one. Maybe. We'll see how good you are. I'm going to ask that first off, you'll take this. I need one who will pass this down. Andrew, if you'll pass these out. I spent quite a long time getting put this together. yesterday I was working on this lesson and trying to figure this all out, this part. So we're going to maybe just do it together here. Most of the activities that are done in the Sunday school material are actually fairly easy to follow. This one seemed to be a little difficult to follow, and I had to kind of reshape it to fit. So you'll see in just a minute. Everybody got the papers? Got yours? Okay. All right. Got that? Thank you. All right, so if I can have someone read the instructions there for us. David, you want to read those instructions for us? On the other page. Did you get the second page? Children. Okay.
The list below gives the names of those blessed by Israel and the reference for the blessing. Scan through Numbers 34, 13 through 35, and write the verse that describes their allotment in the promised land, Canaan. Then find each of the territories on a map. Your teacher may provide you with a map, or you will likely find one in your Bible near Joshua 13 or in an appendix.
Okay, so there's something they seem to be leaving out here, and this is the references they give you out of Numbers 34 don't tell you the allotment at all. They just tell you the princes that lead the nation, individual tribes. They don't tell you the place. So I had to spend some time figuring out where the allotment references are. So they're found in Joshua 13 all the way through 19. So chapter 13 through 19 is where they are. And I'm not going to expect us to read 6 chapters to do this part. So I do want to give us some time to look at those real quick. First off, and we'll deal with the map and we'll describe where they are, because some of them are going to be hard for you to figure out where they're at because you don't know where ancient cities are, and neither do I. Okay? So you're going to go, it's not on my map anyway. So I'll help you figure out where they sit and on your map. You got a blank map with the tribes all listed out there. Now, one thing I want you to notice here, count out your tribe spaces. You got 1, which is a really big one right here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You do not have 12. Now, that's an interesting thing to note. You have 13, and I'll show you why in just a minute, or maybe you'll figure it out when we read through these allotment spaces, okay? Why you got 13 and not 12 going on. Now, one thing to also note is that one of the 12 doesn't even get any land. So that even itself makes the confusion a little more difficult when you got 13 and one of them doesn't even get land. Okay, so we're going to figure that out as well as we work through. So what I want you to do first off, Ephraim, I'm going to just ask that you stay with me in Joshua, okay? We're not going to read every last bit of it, but I'm going to ask that you kind of be in the Joshua 13 through 19 region, okay? Because we're going to kind of jump back and forth and look at this. Go to the book of Joshua. And we're not going to read every last part because there's quite a bit for some of these. Some of these have extremely long descriptions and some have not that long of a description given. So for Ephraim, I want you to look at Joshua 16, 5-8. Someone read that one real quick for us. That's what you can write as your little reference point where that is found. Now, let me explain what's going on here for us to understand in the book of Joshua. What's happening in the book of Joshua? Anybody remember what's going on in the land in the book of Joshua, the time of Joshua? Well, they're not giving it away. They're conquering it, right? They're coming into the land of Canaan and conquering the land. And Moses had already laid out that they were going to get different allotments in the land, right? But when you get into Joshua, you're going to find out that some of the tribes, by the end of the book of Joshua, only 3 of the tribes have conquered all their land. The other remaining have not. They were, basically, that's how, because they were fighting for the individuals, and then they said, we'll just kind of hang around here. And Joshua said, go get to fighting and get the rest of your land. And then the last few are actually divided out in a way in which they are given by lot. And so you'll see that split up all the way into chapter 19. Okay, so start at chapter 16, verse 5. We're looking at Ephraim's. Okay, and I need someone to read Ephraim's 5 through 8. It's going to make not a lot of sense, but go ahead, David.
The border of the children of Ephraim, according to their families, was thus. Even the border of their inheritance on the east side was at Rothadar unto Bethro on the upper. And the border went out towards the sea to Mishpah on the north side, and the border went about eastward unto
Okay, we're just going to call that good, that you've read pretty good on that. And there's more into this, but the Ephraim, we need to remember, where does Ephraim come out of? Which tribe is Ephraim? He comes out of Joseph's family. Okay, so 2 of the tribes that we call the 12 tribes are not, none of them are Joseph. None of them are Joseph. They're Manasseh and Ephraim. Okay, so that's something to remember on that. Now, just kind of getting the reference, I'm not going to make you figure that out. I don't know that you could, but anybody got to guess which one it might be? The very bottom one, the big gigantic one at the bottom?
receive the double portion.
No. It's going to be right there in the middle, dead middle. I don't know if you could blow it up enough to see. That's Ephraim right there. Okay? It sits not by the edge of the Mediterranean Sea, and it doesn't actually connect to the Jordan River, but it's, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of, it's above 2 tribes that are connected, and one big tribe's connected above it. Do you see it, what I'm talking about? Let me see you. That's Ephraim right there. Okay? Anybody else need help finding that one? Yep, you got it. That's Ephraim. That's Ephraim. Yep. Pass it around if you know it. You got it? Okay? That's Ephraim. Okay? That's where he's going to lie out. Okay. Manasseh. Now, Manasseh is a unique one. Okay? He's unique in what he's got. I told you there's 13 places over here. He's the reason why you got 13. Look at Joshua 13, and we're just going to read a chapter or two, because it's or a chapter or two, a verse or two, because it's actually verses 19 through 31, where you see Manasseh described. But these are ones that are on the other side of the Jordan River. Okay? You got Manasseh that's on the other side, you got Reuben is on the other side, and you got Gad is on the other side of the Jordan River. In fact, I just told you the 3 on the other side, if you haven't figured that out. You got Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben on the other side of Jordan. Jordan is this, you see this is the Sea of Galilee, this is the Dead Sea, and that line going down, there's the Jordan River right in between them. Okay? So this side of the Jordan River is actually unofficially, it's not supposed to be the nation of Israel's land. But they took that land. How did they take that land? Well, they conquered some kings when they were coming into the land of Canaan. If you remember, they crossed the Jordan River, took the land. Manasseh's got one of them, Gad's got one of them, Reuben's got one of them. Okay? So let's figure it out which one it is. You think Reuben's the bottom? Why? Are you because your eyes are good enough to read what I held up there?
No, he
He was cursed more than blessed. So he gets the southern, more southern is cursed. Are you saying people that live in the south are cursed?
no, just so small. Just a small thing. Everywhere. Small portion.
Okay. Yeah, water I think is a good thing. Okay. The Dead Sea. Yeah. Okay. All right. Look at. Actually, I think it's 29 to 31. Not. I put 19 to 31. My 2 looks like a 1 there. Okay. Do 29 to 31. Someone read that one of Joshua 13. Who wants to read that? Okay, go ahead, Fred.
The half tribe of Manasseh. And this was the possession of the half tribe, the children of Manasseh by their families. And their coasts were from
Mahanaim.
Mahanaim, all Bashan, all the kingdom of Og, all the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, all the towns of Jair, which are in Bashan, 80 cities, and half of Gilead, Ashtaroth, Adria, cities of the kingdom of Og, in Bashan, came unto the children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, the half of the children of Machir, by their family.
Okay, did you notice there he calls it the half tribe? Why is it called the half tribe? Because it splits into 2 tribes, or to 2 plots. Okay? It splits into 2 plots. So the reason why you have 13 plots there, if you want to kind of understand it that way, is because it splits 2 ways. So one of them you could call East Manasseh, and another one you could call West Manasseh. We'll talk about East Manasseh. It's in the area where you see the biggest part on the east side of the Jordan River. Okay? So it's the one way up here at the top, the biggest part. You can call that East Manasseh. Yes. That big plot, the big section of land at the very top is East Manasseh. Yeah, they get the big one. The West Manasseh, you got more that can be said on this one. Joshua 17 picks it up. Verses 1 to 10 talks about the west side. The West Manasseh is alongside the Jordan River. It sits right above Ephraim. Okay? So if you got Ephraim, it's the one right above Ephraim. That's West Manasseh. Yeah. So it's the only tribe that split like that into 2 portions of land. And they're not even connected to each other across a river. You see that? They're just 2 portions of land. And partly that has to do with the fact that the way Jacob blessed them. If you remember, he blessed Ephraim and he blessed Manasseh a little more than he did Ephraim. And that partly plays into that. Okay? That's one of those things that you have to go back and read it in Genesis. You'll see it. Okay. Joseph. Does Joseph have any land? No, but you do see some things mentioned about Joseph. I'm going to tell you to write it down at least in your notes. To Joshua 14:4 and Joshua 16:1-4 talks about Joseph, and it specifically when it talks about Joseph, it talks about the 2 tribes. Which are the 2 tribes of Joseph? Manasseh and Ephraim. Okay. All right, let's go to Reuben. Reuben, he's one of those on the other side of Jordan. If you see, when you're reading Joshua, it's going to talk about the ones on the other side of Jordan first. Reuben is in Joshua 13:15-23. Joshua 13:15-23. And again, you might have trouble figuring out where all of this is. It says he's on the bank of the river, partly. So we know that he must be on the Jordan River side. Then it talks about their coast going and so forth. I'm not going to ask you to figure it out. It's either the middle or the bottom. What do you want to vote on? The middle or the bottom? Who says middle? Raise your hand. Who says bottom? Raise your hand. Who says I don't know how to raise my hand? Raise your hand. Okay. It is the bottom. Okay. This is Reuben right down here on the bottom. On the east side of Jordan. Okay, that's Reuben. On the bottom, east side of Jordan. Jordan, I'm meaning Jordan is the border, is this side here. Okay? When we're talking about Jordan, the Jordan River's right here, and it's what splits off the land. Officially, this land is not supposed to be Israel's land. It is, but it isn't. Okay? It was meant to be another nation's land, but they conquered them. So Reuben is on this side of the Dead Sea, or you want to say of the Jordan River. All right. Simeon. This is in Joshua 19:1. It's one of those last ones that didn't ever conquer his own land. Joshua 19:1. The second lot came forth to Simeon, even for the tribe of the children of Simeon, according to their families, and their inheritance was within the inheritance of the children of Judah. That should tell you where that one's at, real easy. There's only one that has its inheritance in another one's. So it should tell you two of them right there. There's one that's got its land right in the middle of the other one. Simeon, and then the bigger one around it is what? Judah. So there you go. We got that one answered. Judah looks like it's one of the biggest ones, doesn't it? Do you see that? Does everybody understand what I'm saying here? This little island in the middle of Judah is Simeon. And Judah surrounds it. Yeah. Yeah. Judah surrounds it. He's either protecting it or he's holding it siege, one of the two. Yeah. Okay. Good thing they're brothers. Levi. Joshua 13:33. Why don't you pull over there to that one real quick. And we actually have a couple references, but look at 13:33. This is talking about the east side of Jordan. Look what it says on that. Someone want to read that one real quick? Go ahead, Bill.
But unto the tribe of Levi, Moses gave not any inheritance. The Lord God of Israel was their inheritance, as he said unto them.
So they don't have any land on the east side of Jordan. Okay, so let's look on the west side of Jordan. Go to 14:3 and 4. So we're going to look on the west side. Now we're looking back on the other side. It talks about them again. Who wants to read this next part? You want to read it, Bill, since you're right there? Or?
Moses had given the inheritance of 2 tribes and a half tribe on the other side of Jordan. But unto the Levites he gave none inheritance among them. For the children of Joseph were 2 tribes,
Manasseh.
Therefore they gave no part unto the Levites in the land, save cities to dwell in, with their suburbs for their cattle and for their substance.
Okay, so they didn't have any land that was actually theirs except cities to dwell in, and those cities, which are later called the cities of refuge. If you ever remember them, that's what those are. They are the cities that the Levites live in, and they are scattered all throughout this east or the west side of Jordan. Okay, do they have any land that we can mark Levi tribe? No. Yeah. Now, there's something significant about them. They do set us an example that their inheritance is the Lord, which means that they receive out of the Lord's service. What they get and what's promised to their children, what's promised to their families, comes out of their ministry in the temple or the tabernacle. Okay, so all those sacrifices that are offered, those grain offerings that are offered, part of it gets consumed and burned up, and then part of it is given to those priests to feed them and to take care of them. Okay? When they talk about the tithe that was given to them, the tenth that was to be given, it was given to all those Levites. Okay? So you got Levites all over the place, all over the land of Israel that are being paid for their services to the Lord, but they get the exchange. They don't get to have any land that they can pass down to their descendants in any way. Okay? All right? And in fact, the New Testament sets that uses that example as a way in which ministers get paid. That the ministers get paid the same way. They get paid out of the services of the Lord. So that's if you're Israelites, yeah. Well, you had a lot more people to pay for too. So you got to think about that as well. All right. And by the way, most of the time when we talk about a tithe, it did come in money at times, but a lot of times it came out of food, out of what they grew. A tithe, a portion of their food, a tenth of their food. Not that. That's not what that means. All right. Judah, which is Joshua 15, 1 to 12. Anybody know where Judah's at now? You should have that one resolved, right? The big land where Simeon sits in the middle of it. Zebulun. This is Joshua 19, 10 to 16. It's one of those last lands that didn't conquer. Zebulun, but it's not a big land. And it's up in the north. It's up in the north. Someone want to read at least kind of into that? Joshua 19, 10 to 16. Just start reading and I'll tell you when to stop. Okay, we'll stop right there. So, I'm not sure what river they're talking about, but it's obviously not the Jordan River. It must be another. Yeah, but there is a river that they do have it goes up to, and it doesn't officially go up to the sea, but it heads toward the sea. It's a little tiny guy right in the middle. If you look, that little tiny dude up there, remember West Manasseh you got? Okay, Zebulun is kind of like catty-cornered to it. West Manasseh, Zebulun is catty-cornered to it. Okay? West Manasseh, Zebulun, yep, you got it. Catty-cornered. It's not even touching the Sea of Galilee. It's that one in between all of that. It's kind of landlocked, yeah. It's a little tiny dude. There is, a river going right to the very corner of it, and that might be what they're referring to as the river. Yep. Okay, everybody got that? Got it worked out? Okay, Issachar, this one's Joshua 19, 17 to 23. Just going to give you where this one's at. It's right above West Manasseh. You should be able to see that one pretty easy. And it goes along the Jordan River. See it? It's the one also next to Zebulun. It's right under Zebulun. Issachar. Achar. Now, I'm going to let you read Dan because it might give you some clues on this one that you can see on here. Dan chapter 49. I'm sorry, not 49. Dan chapter 19, Joshua 19, verse 40 to 48. Let me read it, and I'll let you see if you can figure it out. The seventh lot came unto the tribe of the children of Dan according to their families. And it gives their coast of their inheritance. It gives all these names and stuff. The coast of the children of Dan went out too little for them. Therefore the children of Dan went up to fight against Leshem, took it, and smote it with the edge of the sword, possessed it, dwelt there, and called it Leshem Dan, after the name of Dan their father. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan, according to their families, according to their cities, according to their villages. I thought it had a reference to where they're located at. Well, there is a reference somewhere where they're located, but they are right next to the sea. It's either at the top or below West Manasseh. Which one do you think? Who thinks it's the top? Vote. Who thinks it's top? Who thinks it's below West Manasseh? Bill's right. Right straight west of Ephraim, yes. And connected to another significant tribe down there as well. That's Dan. Fighting over a bigger portion, yeah. Not enough sea. All right, Gad. This one's Joshua 13, 24 to 28, and this is the one that's on the other side of the Jordan, on the east side. So you should know, you already have East Manasseh and you already have Reuben, so where's Gad at? Right in the middle. Good. It's got those two big, I don't know what you call those, dog legs on the rabbit ears on it. Okay. Asher. Asher is connected to the Mediterranean Sea. Which one is it? There's only one next to the Mediterranean Sea left. It's that long, skinny one up to the north. That's Joshua 19, 24 to 31. Naphtali. You got two left here. Naphtali, is it that one that's sitting by Ephraim, or is it the one sitting by Asher and Zebulun? Who thinks Ephraim? Raise your hand. Okay. Fred says Ephraim. Who thinks sitting next to Zebulun or Asher? Okay, Naphtali is in the north, not in the middle or whatever. Yeah. So it's that farthest north one, actually. Well, it's kind of lined up with East Manasseh at the top there. See what I'm talking about? You got it? All right, so where's the last one at then? Benjamin should be right next to Judah. It's that last little gap, Benjamin, down there. Okay, and that one's found in Joshua 18, 11 through 20. All right, so I knew this would take us a while because it is a bit of a lengthier project to work on this one. There's a reason why they got a lot of land. They were specially blessed. You remember what I was saying there? They got treated like they were the heir. They got the double portion of land. Yeah, but Judah got quite a bit of land too, didn't he? And does that not play out into what we just saw? It seems to, at least in some bit, to point to that getting a lot of land. Okay. The firstborn, Reuben, didn't get, well, he got land, but he didn't get very much compared to some of his brothers, and he's the firstborn, right? Yeah. Yeah, so he didn't get treated. All right, so which tribe received two sections of land then? Manasseh. And that's why they're called the half tribe. You get two different portions, half tribe on one, half tribe on the other side. Okay? Which brothers have no territory at all? There's two of them. Levi and Joseph, but Joseph gets land through his two boys, right? he got more than others, yeah. Okay, there is an interesting read. Open up to Revelation 7, 4 to 8. Revelation 7, 4 to 8. Who wants to read that real quick? It's going to list out 12 tribes, but interesting to note what is different in the 12 tribes, if you read it. Who's going to read it? Revelation 7, 4 to 8. Bill, good. All right. Yep. Nephilim. Issachar. Okay, there. That's yeah. Okay. Now, what's the difference here that we see in land tribes as opposed to this little list of tribes? Joseph's mentioned, and Levi's mentioned, and there's two that are not. Ephraim's not mentioned, and Dan is missing. Now, don't ask me why. I'm not planning on giving that answer because I haven't got the answer. Okay? And any answer I give you will be speculation, as it is with anybody who would give you that answer. Okay? Okay?
There haven't been more people than 12,000 in some of these tribes.
Yeah.
So which ones were sealed, which ones weren't?
All right. We're not going into the answer. I don't know. Okay? So, all right. So, interesting that it listed that way. But here's important to note in all of this. We got more in our notes, but we don't have time to do it. The important note of all of this is when we see the number 12, it becomes very important to remember a certain people. Which people is it a reference to? Israel. Anytime you see the number 12, remember it that way, okay? That's going to be significant when it comes to interpreting the New Testament and the rest of the Old Testament, the 12 tribes, okay? All right, well, let's go ahead and be dismissed in a word of prayer. I hope this has been a help to you. I know it's kind of a bit of more educational stuff, but how many people knew that about some of these tribes, that they split like that, and you had some sitting in other people's lands, and some got bigger portions, and some? How many people knew those things? And so it's interesting to note when you see it. It makes understanding the Bible a little more significant and come to life a little more. So, Till we read the verse out of Revelation, that it changed them up a little bit. It still listed 12, didn't it? You got that point. It's not fully. If you read in the days of Solomon, when he took on there, well, if you actually read the borders, it said they were to go to the land of Egypt, all the way to they were to go to the land of Egypt, Mediterranean Sea, all the way up to Tyre and Sidon, and then they were to go on the other side all the way to the Euphrates River. That's how much God intended their land to be. Well, they did in the days of Solomon. If you look at the days of Solomon, it said he extended the borders that far, but over time, they lost it back again, lost it because somebody else took it back. So, and there's all sorts of battles and squabbles over the land throughout their history. Even today, if you're to go in the land of Israel right now, there's still that squabbling over the land stuff going on, okay? Yeah, it's been going on for a long time, okay? All right, well, let's go ahead and close in prayer. Wayne, will you close us in prayer, please?